Welcome to Bucktown, one of my favorite neighborhoods here in Chicago, and it just so happens to be my neighborhood where I live. So if there's anyone good to talk to about Bucktown, it's your guy here. Hi, my name is Joe Deardurff. I am a broker with the Crotty Group, and we are standing at the entrance of the 606. What is the 606? This actually is an old railroad track that has been deconverted into a relatively flat path for bikers, walkers, joggers, anyone looking to enjoy outside activity. It's officially known as the Bloomingdale Trail because right behind me is Bloomingdale Avenue, which runs east and west, and this path runs for almost 3 miles west of here, and it starts right here at the far eastern edge of Bucktown. So just to give you a little lay of the land, Bucktown is a triangular sort of shaped neighborhood, and we've got the 9094 Kennedy Expressway to my right, and just beyond that is the Chicago River, which is generally recognized as the far eastern boundary of Bucktown. There is some debate about where Bucktown stops and where Wicker Park begins. Typically, it's going to be around Bloomingdale Avenue, which is where I'm standing here, but it can go a little further south towards North Avenue. So a lot of people ask, why is the trail called the 606? Well, that's because all the zip codes in Chicago start with the number 606 and have 2 different numbers at the end. For example, we're right here standing in 60614. Demographic here in Bucktown is a very young, hip, trendy vibe. The average age of Bucktown residents is only 31 years old, which is incredible for young professionals or young families starting out. There's a lot of great parks and a lot of great housing stock that young professionals like to take advantage of. We are often thought of as the more affordable alternative to our more affluent neighbor next door, which is Lincoln Park. What's crazy about Chicago in March is the dramatic weather changes. It was 60 degrees last week and sunny, and I was actually running on the 606 in shorts and a tank top. Today, I am absolutely freezing in a way too thin coat, but it looks good on camera. Maybe I'll pop this miniature collar and it will do something. So a little history of how Bucktown got its name. Back in the early 1800s, this area was all just a prairie, and it was known as Goat Prairie by the mostly Polish immigrants who had settled in this area and used this land here to raise goats, with male goats being known as bucks. And over time, the name stuck, and it has since become Bucktown, which I prefer saying I live in Bucktown and not Goat Prairie. Because it had such a heavy Polish settlement back in the 1800s, many of the original street names here had Polish names that unfortunately had been changed several times over history. They had taken on some more German names in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then after World War II, those were all changed to much more Anglo-Saxon names. McLean, Shakespeare, Webster, Marshfield, Cortland, all very English names, and those are the names that stuck today. However, there's still a lot of Polish heritage in the community. It's a little early for dinner, but I am outside Mabel's Table here, one of my favorite weeknight neighborhood restaurants. They have an amazing selection. My favorite meal here is the chopped steak, any of their steaks actually, because there's a certain night during the week they offer half-price bottles of wine with a steak. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's like the perfect weeknight getaway out of your kitchen. Speaking of Mabel's Table, the original table of Mabel is inside the restaurant here. It's a big blue table, kind of farmhouse looking, and it pays homage to the chef's mother, Mabel. It was her table. There's also a little hole-in-the-wall theater down this alley called Trapdoor Theater. You can get to it from the outside or from the inside. It's a small, quaint, intimate little venue downstairs behind and underneath Mabel's Table. It's a very little known about destination. Anyone looking on maps, driving unfamiliar with the area, will pass by here multiple times saying, "Where's the Trapdoor Theater?" Well, you need to know a local to find your way back there, but it's right down this alley here. All good things are hidden, right? So right across the street from Mabel's Table, if you want a quick little after-dinner drink, check out the Bucktown Pub. Bucktown Pub is actually a very old gem of the city, founded in the 1930s. For my history buffs out there, you'll know that Prohibition actually ended in 1933, and Bucktown Pub opened in 1932. Shh, they knew what was coming and they got their head start. You may have noticed all throughout Chicago, actually, not just Bucktown, but there are so many homes that are set below street level. Back in 1890, the city had this great idea that all streets need to be the same number of feet above sea level. And so they went through this entire project of raising all the streets that were too low. However, there were already rows and rows of homes, mostly workers' cottages, that of course couldn't be raised. So they simply raised the street in front of the house. And the unintended consequence was creating first floor units that are actually on the second floor of the building. And so you see a lot of staircases like these. So when the street was lower, it felt like a second floor. Now that the street has been raised, the old first floor now feels almost like a garden unit. So here's a perfect example of original workers' cottages from the 1800s, which were all over Bucktown back when it was developing from a goat prairie into a mostly working class neighborhood that worked at many factories nearby. These particular workers' cottages are brick, which means they were built after the Chicago fire, although you still can find many wooden workers' cottages. They all look like 1 or 2 story buildings with a peaked roof. They're typically 2 to 3 units, sometimes 4. And this is a perfect example of how the streets were raised back in 1890 by the city. So you now have the original first floor, which is below ground level, and stairs leading up to what used to be the second floor, but is now considered the main floor of the home. You could buy a workers' cottage for $100 in the 1800s. Imagine that. Nowadays, I don't own all of Bucktown at that price. Workers' cottages, of course, don't really have the look and feel of modern day housing. So a lot of Bucktown now has newer looking housing stock like this one here. It's the same concept. They're usually 2, 3, maybe 4 condos in one building. And the old wooden workers' cottages are being reduced to essentially land value. They're bought, they're torn down, and these beautiful all brick condos are going up. The median home value for a newer construction condo like this one here, probably built 2015 or newer, is going to run you in the mid 500,000. A single family home, detached, meaning you don't share walls with any of your neighbors, not a condo, those are going to run you in the low 1 millions, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Bucktown is also really well known for very consistent lot sizes. A standard Chicago city lot is 25 feet wide by 125 feet deep. If you're lucky, you can find 2 of those lots that have old workers' wooden cottages located on them. And if you're a developer and you're able to scoop up both of those, you demolish both, and now you've got a 50-foot wide lot by 125 feet deep. So you can build a large 6-unit condo building on there or a massive single-family mansion. Fun fact about buying 2 lots, you can actually have a building that is 6 feet wider, because if on a standard Chicago lot, you'd have a 3-foot easement, which is a 3-foot path that you can't build on so that you can go between the buildings. Well, if you buy 2 lots next to each other and you're putting up one building, you don't need that 3-foot easement on each side. So now you've just picked up 6 feet right down the middle of your lot lines, and it's a great use of the land versus 2 old wooden workers' cottages. This house behind me is a newer version of the original workers' cottage, and it's absolutely adorable. Not only do I love the color, the dark, moody theme, but I love how it pays history to Chicago's architecture and how the whole neighborhood began. I absolutely am obsessed with this house. And it has a real fire-burning light next to the door. How amazing is that? What's great about Bucktown is the ease of parking. A lot of it is free parking, which is great. So if you're coming to visit the neighborhood and you're driving, it's really easy to find parking. I'm here outside Club Lucky, which again is a great place for an after dinner drink if you've just gone out to Mabel's Table or one of the other great restaurants in Bucktown. Fun facts on this one, it used to be 2 separate buildings. One was an old Polish reception hall, and next door here on the corner was a hardware store, and then eventually became a bar. Over time, it became combined into one, which is now known as Club Lucky as of the early 1990s. They have an amazing sausage and bell pepper dish that you absolutely have to get. I think it's actually an appetizer, but it's enough to feed you for dinner. If you like pink drinks, their flirtini is phenomenal. I don't care what color it is. I'm drinking that every time I go. You sit at the bar, have a drink, have an appetizer. You can meet so many great people just sitting right here at, again, a local, old school, 100-year-old corner pub, which Bucktown is so well known for. So the inside bar is actually a replica of the old Polish bar back from the late 1930s, early 40s, which is why it has that early mid-century modern feel. They also have a free jukebox. You can pick any music you want. It's super old school. It like flips the pages. It looks like it's vintage, it's amazing, and it's free. It's awesome. This is the jukebox. How old is this jukebox?
Well, restaurant's 34 years old, so 34.
34 years old at least. But the songs, they never get old. They're classics. This is where you sit. You have martini, flirtini, espresso martini, anything that ends in "-ini", and you order up your sausage and bell peppers. I promise you it's gonna be a great night. And chances are you'll see me with my friends probably right down there somewhere.
Used to be a speakeasy, the private dining room, and there was a latch door that went down to the basement. There was a murder in here, bullet holes still in the bar. They held up the bar and the barkeep shot the robber, killed him. 50.
Oh wow, you always like it when the good guy wins. All right, we'll see you, Jim. All right, another local favorite of mine and a very famous place now is Lottie's Pub. And as they say, it's Molly's by day, Lottie's by night. And that's because this is the location of the local hangout known as Molly's Bar on the TV show Chicago Fire. Go back, if you don't watch the show, you're gonna see a lot of this bar inside and out. A little bit of history on this. The original owner, Lottie, used to run a sports gambling operation out of the basement, of course, which is super illegal. And so this has some history back to the old early 1900s. The bar has been many, many things over the years. It's currently a great destination for the Crotty Group, where we will occasionally host client appreciation events. We watched a Cubs season opener here on their TVs. We had all of our clients over, all of the friends over, almost rented out the whole bar. It was a great time. I am here on Damon Avenue, which is a very well-known stretch in Bucktown, and right beside me is 1728 North Damon. This used to be the Ludwig Drum Factory. Dates back almost 100 years and has since, as of the late 1990s, been converted into about 150 condos ranging from 900 square feet, 2,300 square feet, loft style, super cool interior. One of the reasons people love coming to Damon Avenue is it's known as a boutique shopping corridor. Much like Armitage Avenue or Southport Corridor, you have a lot of boutique shops, some of which are maybe more name brand and other are mom and pop shops. It's a whole range and it's a great place to walk on a summer day. You can hop on the 606 here right in front of me. You can take this all the way down to North Avenue. It's sort of the lifeblood of Bucktown before you get into the heart of Wicker Park. So when it comes to transportation in Bucktown, of course, it is a very heavy car user, vehicle user area with the expressway so close by. You do have a lot of commuters that live here. A lot of the homes do offer garages, open and street parking that's mostly free. However, we have a great array of all of Chicago's wonderful public transportation. There is the subway, which runs right along Milwaukee Avenue to our west, and that of course connects you to every network in the city. You can pick up at least 3 different major bus lines here. What is very unique is a Metra stop at Clybourne and Armitage, which is one of the very few, I think maybe one of only 2 Metra, which is the commuter train, not the L, but the Metra. It's the commuter train that goes from the city to the suburbs and back. It's one of the only stops outside of downtown, which is where the train starts and stops. It's one of the only places to pick up the Metra outside of the loop. So we do have a lot of commuters that will hop on the Metra and take that to their jobs, maybe out in the suburbs on the north side. A little further south of here, where the neighborhood stops and where Wicker Park begins is a little bit nebulous. It kind of depends on who you're talking to and which neighborhood they have more affinity for. So right here, we're kind of on the edge of Bucktown and where it bleeds into Wicker Park. That's what's great about these 2 neighborhoods, and again, why they're lumped together so much. People just say, oh, I'm from Bucktown, Wicker Park. I'm here on West Lyndale, and this street is not only gorgeous, but it's a perfect view and display of old Bucktown and new Bucktown, where history meets modern architecture and a good cross-section of the housing stock that you can find in this neighborhood. So right behind me, again, is an old wooden workers cottage that has been updated a little bit with some vinyl siding. Directly next to it, on either side, are newer construction condos. Old wooden workers cottages used to be and had been torn down with new housing stock built in its place. Behind me is a classic example of a double lot, so likely two wood frame buildings used to sit on this lot here. They were demolished and the lots were combined, and now we have a large double wide condo building sitting where two workers' cottages used to be. And this is a pretty common thing. A lot of developers look for these types of properties where they can build on double lots because it gives you more square footage, it allows you to have a wider floor plan, and overall just a more valuable, more enjoyable property. Again, right behind me are some classic examples of beautiful historical buildings. The white and the red brick, these are going to be some of your classic Chicago two-flats. Two-flats are actually unique to Chicago. You never hear the term two-flat outside of Chicago. That's typically just a duplex. And then right next to it, you have a stunning, super modern, newer construction building where once an old house used to be. So you can walk down all these streets in Bucktown and just take in beautiful architecture from past and present and just pick out the one you want. All right, we are coming up on Senior Citizens Memorial Park, but maybe more commonly, it's known as the hosting grounds for the Bucktown Arts Fest. Back in the 1980s, Bucktown became a thriving artists community where artists felt comfortable, safe to express themselves, collaborate, put their art on display, sell their art, and just be creative. And a lot of that remains today. Bucktown is still known very much as an artists community, and every year, Bucktown hosts an annual Arts Fest, and this is just covered with local artisans. When it's not an arts fest, you can just come here and stroll through the park. It's a great place to walk your dog, and you don't see this a lot in the city, this many trees in a park. You can see here they even have colored tiles and all of the colored painting here, just paying a little homage to this being an area where artists gather and put their beautiful artwork on display. That was our neighborhood tour of Bucktown. That's all we have time for today, but there is so much more to this neighborhood that I would absolutely love to share. Again, my name is Joe Deardurff. I am a broker with the Crotty Group here in Chicago and your local Bucktown resident and guide.